Hello and welcome to Counterspin. Now Napoleon, on your screen right here, once said that a man does not have himself killed for a halfpenny a day or for a petty distinction. You must speak to the soul in order to electrify him. So, armies throughout history have tried to do just that. In ancient Rome, national pride, a measure of salt, and the promise of land sufficed. For the Mongols, the prospect of loot and empire worked wonders. Greed combined with religious fervor did the trick for the Crusaders, and later, nationalism and ideological purity combined to make an often winning combination. But of all these motivational tools, religious fervor simultaneously gets the best results, but is also the most difficult to control. So let's start here at home with Pakistan's own military, which has so often been castigated by both local and foreign analysts for its physical and ideological links with religious extremists. We know this story. It starts with General Zarrar, who tried to change the fundamentally secular nature of the military through his Islamization program. Outward religious observation became institutionalized and a must for advancement through the ranks. A large body of Islamist-oriented officers were commissioned during the Zarrar regime, and the ideology naturally permeated the lower ranks as well. Then came the Afghan War, and the ideology of jihad became ever more firmly ingrained, as did links with proxy armies who were even more extreme in their views. The links and the mindset remained long after Zarrar was gone, only becoming visible when something really big broke the surface. Like in 1995, when Major General Zahirul Islam Abbasi hatched a plan to stage a coup, assassinate then Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto, cabinet officials and the military chiefs, and replace the government with an Islamic regime. But by and large, any such tendencies were kept well out of sight. Until, of course, everything changed on September 11, 2001, when Pakistan's strategic U-turn did not go down well with those who believed they were fighting for a holy cause. Here, the fundamental problem of a religiously inspired military comes to the fore. Namely, what do you do when what you believe are God's commands conflict with the military high command? In August 2003, a group of Pakistani army officers were arrested for alleged links to Al-Qaeda and other extremist militant organizations. This event broke the silence, and what followed were a series of events which highlighted the conflict of ideologies. Following an assassination attempt on then President Musharraf, at least 57 Pakistan Air Force technicians were arrested and court-martialed later in 2009. 6 were sentenced to death. And of course, one of the ringleaders of the infamous GHQ attack was a former army man named Akil, alias Dr. Usman. But contrary to popular opinion, Pakistan isn't the only country where this phenomenon takes place. Take, for example, our avowedly secular neighbors.
In 2007, 68 people lost their lives in the inferno following the attack on the Samjhauta Express. The attack was universally condemned, with both Pakistan and Indian politicians making lofty speeches about the peace process not being affected. With the Pakistani army being infamous in the international media for its links to extremist Islamic groups, the blame inevitably came to rest on Islamic militants supposedly taking refuge in Pakistan. However, ironically, the tables were turned when Indian investigators discovered that it was actually an Indian army colonel who had been involved in the bombings. Lieutenant Colonel Shrikant Prasad Purohit was initially implicated for his involvement in the Malegaon blast of 2006, when bombs exploded at Muslim cemeteries and mosques in the month of Ramadan. From procuring explosives from army supplies to providing funding to the militants, Colonel Purohit has been described as the mastermind behind the blasts. Along with this, he is said to have arranged for fake military ID cards providing Hindutva activists access to army bases for training. The 38-year-old colonel has the dubious distinction of being the first serving officer of the Indian Army to be arrested in connection with the terrorist attack. Having worked several stints in military intelligence, Purohit's role in several other terrorist attacks, including the one on the Samjhauta Express, were intensely investigated. Apart from Purohit, 2 retired officers were also detained. Major Ramesh Upadhyay and Colonel Shailesh Rehkar provided bomb-making training and, most controversially, allowed Hindu extremist groups to hold training on the campus of a military school. Further reports have also suggested that a senior army officer is believed to have had prior knowledge of the Malegaon blasts. All 3 of the detained have made no secret of their radical viewpoints, citing their actions as a form of revenge terrorism on Muslims. They had all been members of the Hindu nationalist group Abhinav Bharat, which espoused a radical armed struggle concept in handling Islamic terror. For an institution which prides itself on its secularism, these arrests have laid a shadow of doubt over the Indian Army's ability to be devoid of extremist factions. Sophia Safi, DawnNews.
Unfortunately, Hemant Karkare, the man who was leading the investigation into Colonel Purohit, was killed in the Mumbai attacks, which also served to draw attention away from the increasing links between Hindu extremists and the Indian Army. Much like Major Nidal's shooting rampage at Fort Hood distracted from the real fundamentalist takeover of the US Army. But more on that after the break.